The iron jaws of the steam shovels bite into the fallen mountainsides. Bulldozers, heavy tanks of construction, level roads where only walls of earth had stood before. In weather so cold that concrete has to be heated before it can be poured, the Seabees are on the job, laying foundations for gun emplacements, oil tanks, storehouses, concrete foundations on which victory will be built. The fine art of logistics, a big word for the big job of getting the right thing to the right place at the right time, made it necessary for the Seabees to bring their own lumber yard with them. And lumber plus Seabees quickly adds up to an imposing total of barracks, hospitals, shipyards, warehouses. A modern advanced base built to withstand the most savage attacks of nature as well as the enemy. A naval base thoroughly equipped to supply and serve the planes and ships that were gathering for a great offensive in the north. No longer would warships damaged in action have to creep back to Seattle for necessary repairs. When the Seabees promised to have this destroyer out to sea in 36 hours, the skipper said it couldn't be done. But the Seabees' answer became a famous slogan, "Can do." "36 hours later, the destroyer was rejoining her task force, and a jubilant skipper was expressing his gratitude to the Seabees in an official commendation. In all my experience with shipyards, I have never seen such tireless energy. In spite of suggestions that the Seabees be relieved for rest, many of them worked 36 hours straight until the job was done. That's how the Seabees became a legend in the Aleutians. That's how victory was made inevitable at Attu. But materials for permanent quarters are on their way. 50 miles of tar paper. And buildings shipped in prefabricated sections that fit together like parts of a jigsaw puzzle. But a puzzle that Seabees solve with lightning speed. For working in perfect teamwork, they shave a few precious minutes off their own record for setting up this unit. A good-sized, modern, and substantial hospital in 5 hours. In the States, gas stations may be opening late and closing early, but the Attu service station does business 24 hours a day. Transforming this barren little island into a flourishing base was a 24-hour-a-day job, or as the Seabees like to put it, a 36-hour-a-day job. But a job that was done and finished in less time than the most optimistic American had hoped, or the most pessimistic Jap had feared. With the Aleutian chain anchored at one end by Dutch Harbor and on the other by Attu, the enemy holding out on Kiska found himself hopelessly cut off from his source of supplies. For thoughtful Americans who like to read behind the headlines, the headline "Yanks retake Attu" had become "Seabees consolidate Attu." With the Aleutians back in American hands, hands that not only fired accurately but built swiftly, the finger pointing toward Japan clenched into a fist that could strike a direct and punishing blow at the enemy's heart. From other points in the Pacific, the left hook was being planned. The Seabees put Midway back on the map. At Pearl Harbor, officers of the Civil Engineer Corps assisted in the salvaging of ships that had been irreparably lost, according to the Japanese press. A strange name in the far-off Solomons became a household word: Guadalcanal. Yes, when you say Guadalcanal, you say Marines. But those Marines will be the first to tell you that if they made history at Guadal, those Seabees working and fighting shoulder to shoulder with them made something more tangible than history. They made a thriving base out of the flaming wreckage that was left after Johnny Marine had proved his point to Mr. Tojo that this island was too small for the two of them. With possession of Henderson Field, conclusion jumpers were congratulating each other on our domination of the South Pacific. For after all, wasn't Henderson Field the key to the Solomons? Yes, we had wrested a key from the Japs that was going to open some mighty important doors. But before that key could turn a single lock, it was badly in need of repair. The Seabees, digging into that airfield with the same fighting spirit as the Marines had hit the beach, repaired 53 shell and bomb craters in 48 hours. That would be a record in any league, but the Seabees hung up their record under fire. Who got this one was a shipfitter first class, but he seems to be a first-class gunner, too. When Congressman Moss of Minnesota saw the Seabees in action at Guadalcanal, he reported, "When Jap attacks were made, I saw Seabees working on Henderson Field drop their tools, pick up their rifles, and fight side by side with the Marines. When the attack was over, the Seabees put down their guns, picked up their tools, and calmly went back to work again." Just in time to fight off the enemy's most desperate counterattack, our fighter planes were able to use the runway. But the Seabees didn't stop for any bows. They knew it was their job to put Guadalcanal on the offensive. Widen the field. Lengthen the runway. Place the fill. Grade the surface. Level it off. Make it navigable, not only for fighter planes, but for flying fortresses. In so short a time that even the slant eyes of the enemy opened wide, the field is ready. And as the first bomber takes off on its mission of softening up enemy bases for the landing operations ahead, the Seabees win a two-fisted tribute from a two-fisted Marine, Lieutenant General Vandergrift, who said, "I don't know how we would have gotten into the air without the Seabees." Now that the beachhead has been secured, whale-like LSTs slide their bows up on the beach and begin to pour forth from their cavernous bellies the heavy equipment with which the Seabees will transform this primitive outpost into another powerful base. Heavy trucks churn their way through the mud and undergrowth. And if they bog down, there's always a good old bulldozer, as versatile as a Seabee himself, to come to the rescue. Another favorite with the newsreels is the big gun blasting enemy positions. Less familiar is the back-breaking job that must be done before that gun is ready to go to work. Like some giant prehistoric beast, the 155 lumbers through the jungle, guided by Seabees to the place where it can do the most good, shelling the vital Japanese stronghold on nearby Munda Point. Munda. Once a tropical paradise on a blue lagoon. Then a threatening enemy base. Now a desolate graveyard of dead trees. Dead planes. Dead Japanese ambitions and dead Japanese soldiers. Even the Munda landing strip is dead, with gaping shell holes in its side. But wherever the Seabees land, the odor of death is quickly overcome. For they work a new kind of magic in the tropics that brings dead island bases back to life again. But their magic has a simple formula: 1 part sweat and 1 part know-how. The Seabee word for getting materials where you can find them. In this case, tropical coral to surface the shell-pocked landing strip. Imperative that landing strip be readied as soon as possible. That was the message from headquarters. At Munda, the impossible, what even Air Corps authorities considered impossible, the Seabees accomplished in 5 days. On the 5th day, the Seabees receive an unexpected bonus for their overtime. A fighter pilot contemplating a crash landing for his disabled corsair spots their handiwork in the nick of time and sets her down hard but safely on the coral strip. A wordless but eloquent tribute to the Seabees. The roar of powerful engines, the din of air traffic, incorporates Munda into the intricate network of allied bases in the South Pacific. Munda has risen from the dead. Another triumph in the Seabees' constructive conquest of the tropics as they go blasting their way through the South Pacific. A new road in 72 hours. 1,200 Quonset huts in 8 days. Another airfield 9 days from the falling of the first tree. And so the work goes on. Tree by tree and base by base, the Seabees blaze the path that leads to Tokyo and final victory. How many headline readers appreciate the far-sighted construction program that lies behind those banner lines? Not in 1943, but in 1941. Not in southern Europe, but far off in an inconspicuous Scottish hamlet, began the great offensive on fortress Europe that is so rapidly gathering momentum today. Here the Seabees, under the very nose of the Luftwaffe, completed the base from which Anglo-American combined operations launched its initial drive in the European theater. Before the Navy's builders arrived, there was nothing here but an ancient fishing pier. 2,400 feet of ocean-going docks had to be constructed on the Clyde to accommodate our invasion forces, shoving off for their African adventure. As the rhythm of invasion quickened, the tempo of construction kept pace. At Oran, the causeways that were to play so decisive a part in the invasion of Sicily were assembled and tested. Before Bizet could play the vital role the High Command had assigned to it, every dock had to be restored. Every scuttled Axis ship clogging the harbor had to be raised. Now the curtain was rising on the big show. Bound for Sicily, the largest armada the world had ever seen. While the democratic people of the world held their breath, more than 2,000 vessels labored through angry seas to bring the war to Mussolini's doorstep. Something new in invasion styles, ships that carry their own portable docks, an innovation in landing operations that was originated and developed by the Civil Engineer Corps before the outbreak of the war receives its baptism in fire. Not even the Sailor's Bible, the Blue Jacket's Manual, can tell them how to secure the heavy pontoons that form the causeway from which the LST's equipment is unloaded when the shore is too shallow for beach landings. For these Seabees are adding a new page to the handbook of seamanship. As coolly and efficiently as if this were just another practice landing at Norfolk Bay, our amphibious forces barge in on Signor Mussolini. An operation that had become routine in trial landings is a severe test of courage and skill as the causeway, cut loose from the LST in a choppy surf, sweeps in to shore on its own momentum. First to hit the beach and the last to leave, the Seabees are the cleanup men who salvage the wrecked ships and splintered causeways that are left in the wake of every invasion. This is beachcombing on a grand scale, for putting twisted steel and charred wood back to work again saves millions of dollars for Uncle Sam. Our motorized divisions roll along the main streets of Sicilian towns as safely as they cross the pontoon causeways. With Sicily secured as an Allied base, a new D-Day looms up, the most daring and significant D-Day of World War II, the first Allied invasion of Fortress Europe. Now plans so carefully laid at the Casablanca Conference months before are ready to be translated into violent and victorious reality. As they approached the coast of Italy, they were constantly meeting up with other convoys until the sea was completely covered with ships, converging through the smokescreen on the Bay of Salerno. LSTs were loaded with bulldozers, tractors, and other Seabee as well as infantry equipment. The sea was calm and beautiful. But that was only the lull before the storm, the most terrible man-made storm that was ever seen. Commandos, Rangers, and Seabees in the first wave were a perfect target for Nazi artillery, firing on them from the hills. But they held on. Sudden death was in the air and hidden in the sea. One of the first pontoons dropped over the side, hit a mine before it could leave the LST. There were 35 Seabees on that pontoon. A bathing beach where fun-loving Italians used to sun themselves in peaceful days was soaked in blood. When you're in the spot our boys were in that night, it helps to feel that gun in your hand and to know you can return blow for blow. But those Seabees responsible for setting up the beachheads, marking off the spaces for the LSTs and LCIs to come in, and directing the traffic that had to drive onto the beach in the face of that terrible enemy fire, they just had to stand there and take it. The Seabees fought every chance they got, but there were thousands to do the fighting, and not enough to do those dirty jobs on the beach, without which our forces would never get ashore. Cutting through the wreckage of trucks and tanks that had been crushed by German firepower into a wall of twisted molten metal, the bulldozers cleared the way for powerful General Sherman. While the battle raged, the Seabees threw up impromptu storage houses for ammunition and equipment, and dressing stations for the wounded, where men who would have bled to death could be treated in time to bring them back to life and to their homes again. First inch by inch, then foot by foot, and finally yard by yard, our troops fought their way up the beach, now littered with broken machines and broken men. While the Seabees, with weary muscles but iron wills, went on unloading supplies until that bloody beachhead began to look like a naval landing base. There has seldom been so much courage in one place as on that beach at Salerno, from the lowest buck private to General Clark. But the Seabees were the unsung heroes of Salerno. And as the armies of democracy drive north on the road to Naples, Rome, and further on, Berlin, every man who took his chances on the shore that night could tell you, if we ever go into action as hot as those bloody days of Salerno, I hope to God the Seabees are there with us.
We have shown you in part some of the things accomplished by the Seabees. We are proud of them. We look to the future with complete confidence in our ability to perform all those tasks which may be imposed upon us by our Commander-in-Chief. With that spirit, we will win.